It was a crime more than 4 decades ago. Brutality and callousness makes it a chilling murderer. On Friday the 13th, the monster of Worcester was born. It all began in 1972, when Clive Ralph and his wife Elise had a new housemate at their small home in Worcester. The housemate David had been an old school friend of Clive's, and his wife was pregnant, and they had 2 children, Paul, who was 3, and 20-month-old Dawn. Samantha was born in September in 1972. There were 6 people that were living in the small house, and as you can imagine, it was a tight squeeze. So, what brought David to this small family's home? David's childhood had been spent making frequent moves common to families of military personnel. David's father, Thomas, was an army sergeant, and when David left school, he followed his dad into the forces, joining the Navy Army, his dream job. Yet disappointment and shame would follow. He was dismissed after getting drunk, and an act of arson. Troubles of drinking would be a consistent feature in David's life. David also had a short-lived and intense relationship that ended in him being dumped by his fiancée on New Year's Eve in 1971. So as you can imagine, he was feeling very, very heartbroken. So David was living at home. He went back to his parents' house, but they kicked him out because he was lazy and he kept feeling sorry for himself and drinking and just not doing anything, just being a bum, basically. So that's when David got in touch with the Ralphs, and they let him stay with them. David was said that he was good with the children, that he was good, and he used to help out babysitting, while Clive worked as a lorry driver, and his wife would take on shifts at the pub. On Friday the 13th, 1973, Clive's wife was working at the pub, and Clive, as often he did, would go to work, and after work would go to the pub and have a last pint before he'd pick his wife up after her shift. He'd left the home, the children had been asleep in their beds. Looking after them had been David McGreevy. Earlier in that evening, David had been in the pub, and he did about 5 or 7 pints, so he was maybe a bit drunk, a bit tipsy. He was playing some cards and darts, and he was having a good time with his friends. But then all of a sudden he had a little bit of an altercation, and he decided to put his cigar out in his mate's drink, which obviously infuriated them, so they got in a bit of a fight. Clive saw this and decided to take David home. So David was there with the children. So he left and went and got his wife from her shift. When Clive and his wife returned home, they had been shocked to find that the whole house was surrounded by police, and they wouldn't let them in the house, and instead they removed them and took them to the police station. Once they got there, they were told the unthinkable news that their children had been dead. They'd all been murdered. The devastation struck. That night, in the early hours, about 10:15 to 11:15, David, drunk in a bad mood, he lost his temper while looking after the little children. It's believed he became so frustrated with baby crying for her bottle, but rather than tend to her needs as a caring babysitter would have done, all hell broke loose. First was baby Samantha. She died from a fractured skull. Dawn was just 2 years old and her throat was slit, and 4-year-old Paul was strangled to death. Shockingly, the violence towards the children did not stop there. He went to the basement and he got a pickaxe, and he started to proceed to mutilate their bodies. He then impaled the 3 lifeless bodies on the neighbour's fence, almost like he wanted someone to see his hellish handiwork. Then David just left the scene, hid his crimes to later admit, "It was me, but it wasn't me." He later explained, and over Samantha's mouth, and it went from there. On Paul, I used a wire. I was going to bury him, but I couldn't. I just went outside and put them on the fence. All I could hear was kids, kids, kids. Because he pleaded guilty, because David pleaded guilty, the court hearing just lasted 8 minutes. He was sentenced to life in prison to serve a minimum term of 20 years. Despite the horror of David's crimes, he remained relatively unknown to the public until it was revealed in 2006 that he soon could be released. He was denied for 45 years. Now David walks the streets. He's not allowed anywhere near the family or Worcester. He's now 69 years old. He has conditions, so if he breaks these conditions, he will be sent back to prison. But right now, he's a free man walking around, and unfortunately, these children's lives have been gone, taken, and the family are ruined. It's a really sad story. It's also very gruesome, and the fact that it happened on Friday the 13th makes it even more just that little bit more creepy and chilling. And the fact that nobody really knew about it as well, it's just so sad. This story should be told. So I hope you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and I will be releasing new videos out on Thursdays, so please watch out for that.